Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for tuning into another exciting edition of the Stingray Show. Hope everybody's doing well out there today. Brian, how are you doing today?
Doing well.
Well, that's great, man. And, boy, I tell you what, it's hot outside, isn't it?
Yes, very hot. Part of us here in Alabama are getting really humid, uncomfortable heat, and some of us are getting flooded out.
I know, Birmingham, Alabama, and those spots up there. But listen, Brian, real quick, we've had some developing stuff, and I know that you're probably going to be following this for a pretty good little while. You're a Cleveland fan, obviously, and a LeBron fan.
Well, don't go that far. I'm a Heat fan, but, right. You know, I follow LeBron. What
are your thoughts on Kyrie Irving wanting to leave Cleveland all of a sudden? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, it kind of shocks me because who wants to leave a team with LeBron James? You're going to be in contention pretty much all the time.
Right.
And now he wants to leave and go to a team Kyrie Irving does, to where he can be he doesn't have to be the second banana anymore.
Yes.
But however, I mean, it makes you wonder if some people just think there's no hope in beating the Warriors.
Right.
And he's just like, well, hell, if I stay on this team, what are we going to go to the finals and we're going to lose to them again? Why can't I go somewhere and be the main or the guy?
Right.
Minnesota doesn't think that way, apparently, because they have just got Jimmy Butler, and they're one of the teams rumored to be going after Irving.
And also the Spurs. But, you know, Kawhi Leonard and Kyrie Irving, I think that would be really fun to watch with the San Antonio Spurs. Don't you agree?
I do. I agree. But I just don't know who Cleveland gets for him.
Yes.
You cannot pair Kevin Love and LaMarcus Aldridge on the same team. They're the same player.
Right.
6'10", 11 guys and just stand outside and shoot the three. So I don't know how it would work. You would have to have a third team available.
Right.
Kawhi Leonard, Spurs are not going to trade him for Irving.
No.
The only person they would probably trade him for would be LeBron. And even then, probably not, because he's younger. So I just don't know how it works out with the Spurs. I don't know how it works out with Minnesota because they're interested now. So it's a funny scenario that could end up being to where the Cavs get Wiggins back after drafting him in 2014, and they do an exchange, maybe Wiggins and another player for Kyrie Irving.
Right.
And then what does it all boil down to? In 2004, you should have just traded Kyrie for Love,
right,
and kept Wiggins. So we all end up back at square one at the end of the day if that's what happens.
Right.
You know?
And what it breaks down to is trying to beat the Warriors again, and that's going to be tough.
Nobody's going. Go Warriors! Go Warriors!
I mean, because
you have won it again right now. Nobody's going to be able to stop them.
No. So unless, of course, there was some kind of an issue or a blow up between KD and Curry. Don't you agree?
Yeah, there's some.
We apologize for that. I did have a phone call come in, so we do apologize. But go ahead, like you were saying.
If someone gets injured, that always shakes things up. But, you know, it's just everybody seems to be playing for second place. They're just too good with Durant.
Yes.
And they were good enough as it was before they even got Durant. So I really don't know who's going to be able to stop them.
Well, let's also talk about, I don't know if you saw this or not, Brian, but one of the star players for the Phoenix Suns tore his ACL and is done for the remainder of the season.
Who is it?
I believe it was one of their draft picks from this season, and that would not be good.
I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm not really following NBA too much anymore now that free agency's over. Now it's all about college football for me.
Yes.
And Tell the audience what we're going to be talking about today.
Today we're going to be talking about the Auburn Tigers and the Tennessee Volunteers, and we're going to have on about, in about 15 minutes actually, we are going to have on Cole Cubelic from the SEC Network and ESPN to talk about War Eagle and Auburn, and then we're going to have Chris Yao on from the northern part of Alabama, or actually
he's in
Tennessee.
Now.
Okay,
yeah.
I got you, to talk about Tennessee. And so both of those programs, as we head into this, Brian, both teams have a lot of question marks at the quarterback position. Don't you agree?
I do, yeah. Auburn's quarterback situation may be a little bit better than Tennessee's.
Yes.
If, there's not another Jeremy Johnson case to where they really hype a guy up and he doesn't come through.
That was
What did
awful.
you just pick today to be Alabama arch rival day? We're
Yeah,
previewing
I
Auburn
guess.
and Tennessee.
Yes.
So, Alabama fans, you guys listen up today because we're talking about the two biggest games on the schedule.
Yes.
Obviously outside of Florida State. That's
Right.
a pretty big one, rivalry or not.
Oh, yeah. And the Alabama preview will be August the 30th.
Waiting for very last build up to the
Florida
what we
State
expect to be
game.
number 1 versus number 2.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to be awesome. But who... Now, of course, let me ask you this, Brian, because last year, after the Sugar Bowl loss that Auburn suffered, there was a lot of people down at Auburn that were on the Fire Gus Malzahn bandwagon. Do you feel like that the Stidham grab for him gets him off the hot seat a little bit?
I mean, only if he produces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that right now. I don't think that Malzahn's off the bandwagon or the bandwagon, the hot seat. I just think that this hype and expectations kind of distract the fact that he's on the hot seat. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. It kind of distracts people from, oh, we've got our savior. Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah.
We've got our savior. And, people said that about Jeremy Johnson. So
yes.
if it ends up going the same way, man, I don't know. So we shall see. Right now, he's not off the hot seat. They need to beat Clemson.
Yeah. Somebody asked, how many games does Malzahn have to win in order to keep from being fired?
Well,
That's
I
tough.
think it depends on who he beats.
Yes.
A Clemson loss early is going to get the chains rolling, especially if Clemson comes out and looks shaky still at the quarterback position after having to replace Deshaun Watson. Alabama, another loss to Bama could ruin everything.
Oh,
and
yes.
That's kind of hard to avoid, but
I know.
It depends on how the rest of the seasons went. If they've only lost like a game or two up into that Iron Bowl and they lose it, they could end up getting fired. He could end up getting fired. If they're 8-3, come out, beat Bama,
he's off the hot seat.
Could be 7-4.
Yep.
Could be 7-4. Beat Bama. He's probably off the hot seat.
Right.
Especially if Bama's having another one-loss or undefeated season at the time. So I think it depends on who he beats. I mean, regardless of the record, he can't go 6-6.
No.
If he goes 500 or 7-5, he ain't beating Bama in the first place.
No.
It's going to take a really good team to come into that Iron Bowl. So I think it depends on who he beats. Probably need to beat Georgia. That'll be a big game. Depends on which rivals that he beats, and maybe he may need to win the West.
Yes.
I don't know.
And that game is at Jordan-Hare this year, the Bama game, so that should be that should help them out somewhat. All right, what about Tennessee? Because Butch Jones, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but Butch Jones really had his best quarterback that he's had in Josh Dobbs, and what do they get out of him? A Music City Bowl trip. I mean, that's really disappointing if you're a Tennessee fan. Don't you agree?
I do. Tennessee, they were expected to do a lot more by now. 13 obviously was a lost year. 14, man, still taking time. 15 and 16, however, they've really not lived up to the expectations.
Yeah.
UT looked in 2015 to turn the corner like they were going to beat Alabama. Then that final drive came. Last year, undefeated through 5 games, and then lost the A&M game. Sure, that's fine. It was an overtime loss. They came back again, had a great effort. Then what do? They turn around and lay an egg in a 49-10 loss to Bama, and everybody said, well, same old Butch, same old Vols team. So this year, the verdict's still out on them. They're making steps forward every year, albeit they're making baby steps, aren't they? Very slow steps.
Yes. I agree. And so, average team at best, somebody said. Forrest Birch, thank you for bringing that in. He said average team at best.
All Tennessee's doing is getting about one more win a year. It started at 6. They won 5 games in 13. Then it's like it went up to 6.
Yes.
Then 7, 8. Now 9. Can they? If they win 10, they're gonna have to win the East.
All right, and I'm gonna tell you this too.
I think that Tennessee probably needs to win the East for him to be safe. That's not necessarily true, but it would help.
Right.
If Tennessee and Auburn are playing in Atlanta, but in December, both Butch and Malzahn are gonna have jobs, and Kevin Sumlin probably won't.
I know.
But he's not. I don't think Sumlin's expected to win the West. I don't even think Auburn is. I don't think Auburn has to win the West because of Alabama. Everybody's saying, well, it's just almost an impossible division to come out of. It may be.
Yes.
Now, however, the East is a little more wide open.
Yep.
The East is winnable if Tennessee finds a quarterback.
I know.
So that's the whole
they got
thing.
Issues
and
there.
We're going to be talking about that when we get our guest on, Chris Yao, in a little bit. So first is going to be Auburn. So what time is our interview with Cubelic?
Here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
So I'm getting excited about that. How about you?
I am as well. We're going to talk some Auburn football. My biggest rival. State fans like Auburn?
No, not really. We don't like anybody. I'm just going to tell you right now. We just like us. That's all.
Y'all like Kentucky?
No, because they beat us last year. Made us so mad. Anyway,
well, let's look at the depth chart a little bit and go through the depth chart so that we can get an idea of what Auburn looks like before we start asking Cubelic these questions on the phone.
Yes.
Is he at 2:30?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start. Everything starts with the quarterback position, and Jared Stidham, who is a sophomore, it feels like he's been in college 4 years. He was a Texas Tech commitment. Pulled out, went to Baylor, played a couple games at Baylor due to injury, and the mess went down with Art Briles, decides to transfer. Went to Auburn, set out a year last season, and now he's finally going to be, I guess you could say on his third team, although he never really enrolled at Tech.
Right.
But he was strongly committed there for a while.
Yes.
Will he stick now at Auburn? So Sean White's moving as the backup now, and who knows what's happened with Franklin III.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Everything starts at the quarterback position, and if you look at his targets he's going to have, Ryan Davis and Darius Slayton, they're returning starters on the receiving corps. And then Kyle Davis is expected to start at the other wide receiver.
Yes.
And running back Cameron Petway will lead the way, who had a very good season last year until he got injured. And then Kerryon Johnson he's going to be in the mix as well. So Auburn seems to be okay at the skill position, especially the running back position. What do you think?
I completely agree. Once again, but the defense, for me, is going to be the issue because they lost a lot on defense from last year. So if there's one big question mark about Auburn, it is going to be that defensive line play.
Yeah.
Because they lost Montravius Adams, and they really they were really good on defense last year, and they lost a lot on defense this year going into the football season.
Yes. Now Marlon Davidson, he is going to be a strong, a big asset for them. He was a freshman last season, started for Auburn, and he's taking the defensive end spot. Now on the line, defensive line, you have Dontavius Russell coming back. Andrew Williams is expected to start at the other tackle position, while at the Buck spot, Paul James III is expected to take over there.
Yes.
You have Deshaun Davis at outside linebacker with Trey Williams, and Trey Williams playing the other position. Then in the secondary, they've got both safeties coming back, Trey Matthews and Stephen Roberts. But at the cornerback position, Carlton Davis and then Javaris Davis will be a sophomore starting at the other cornerback position.
Right. And I'm going to tell you what, they desperately need to find a defensive guy. And plus, let's not forget, Brian, that they have a brand new offensive coordinator to break in as well down there.
Yes, I mean Auburn with what's his name again?
Lindsey.
Huh?
Lindsey. His last name is Lindsey.
Okay.
Yes.
Where did he come from?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not sure about where he came from, but he's supposed to be more of a open
Chip
it up.
Lindsey,
Chip.
Never heard of the fella.
But he's supposed to be more of a wide open pass type offensive coordinator. And
well, I think that it's going to take that because Jared Stidham's not going to be able to run like Nick Marshall or Cam Newton. It's just not going to work. He's going to. I think that he brought in Chip Lindsey if he's that kind of runs that type of an offense because he knows that he's going to have to air it out with Stidham. And yes, he's probably going to be leaving just as soon as he got there if he doesn't beat Alabama.
Yep, that's right.
Yep, he'd be on the Gus bus out of town. Which could be the next bus out of town.
Yep.
Hopefully they signed him on a short contract.
Right. Let's hope. But let's look at the schedule for Auburn and break that down. Because obviously the Clemson game is going to be the telltale sign at how they do.
The first game is Georgia Southern, which means Auburn fans are likely going to sit back, watch an early game, probably be an early day game. They're going to get to sit back and roll over Georgia Southern.
Let's hope.
Yeah, I believe they will. And then the big game for Auburn.
Oh, it's a 6:30 game, by the way.
It's a 6:30 game. Okay, well then Auburn fans are going to be flipping the TV over, really hoping Alabama loses on that game.
But at the stadium, though.
Yeah, at the stadium they will have that. Yes, they will have that score on, as long as Alabama's losing for sure. Yeah. At Clemson now, that is the second game.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big one. I expect that to be a night game as well. I don't know who else plays that week, but that is a game day caliber game. You can see game day going to in week 2 while everybody else plays patsies. Let's face it, everybody that plays a tough opening game like Alabama, Florida State, they're going to play a patsy the next week.
Mississippi State plays at Louisiana Tech that week.
Do you think College Game Day will go there?
No, not at all.
Then they play Mercer. So Mercer's another easy one. At Missouri.
Oh, now that Tigers versus Tigers. That's Drew Lock's going to put a lot of pressure on that Auburn defense in that game. Because Drew Lock is a really good quarterback.
It really is going to depend a lot on what happens in that Clemson game. And obviously you need to beat Missouri. So if Gus Malzahn, welcomes the Bulldogs into Auburn on September 30th and he's 4-0, then he's going in the right direction to keep his job. Let's say they beat Mississippi State. I'm one of those. We're not talking state today, and I actually will be out of town for a wedding when we do. So I'll go ahead. I was talking to Stingray. I said, man, that LSU, Auburn, Georgia stretch is where you really got to watch out for if you're Mississippi State, because they could come out of that with 2 losses. God forbid you don't want to lose all 3 of them, because some of those teams may not be as good as you would think. Auburn may not be really good, but one of those teams is going to come out and they're going to be really good. Mississippi State, yes, that could get him fired, especially not if it's his first loss, I don't think, but if he's already lost to Clemson.
And it's at Auburn too, so that would not help him at all.
But if he's 4-0 coming in and he gets past Mississippi State, Ole Miss is, you can go ahead and count that a win, I think.
Where's that game?
It's at home. It's at Auburn.
Okay, wow.
If Auburn goes to Baton Rouge October 14th, undefeated, it's going to be very hard to fire him no matter how it shakes down, unless he just loses the rest of the games.
Right.
But if he's 6-0 going to Baton Rouge, I do think that'll be one they'll lose.
Yeah.
Now, if it's the first loss, that would be great for Gus, because that means he could get out of the year with only 1 or 2 losses. With Alabama and Georgia looming. They're at A&M November 4th, and A&M could already be reeling right then, because that's usually when they take their downslide.
A&M could be reeling after week 1 when they go to Pasadena. I mean, that is
Sumlin needs to win that game so bad. Do you think Gus Malzahn will need to do anything to win?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Maybe pick up his phone and call a stripper.
I don't know.
Give
me a second.
I had to do that. If there's any Ole Miss fans listening, I hope you're as upset and disgusted with Malzahn. Hugh Freeze,
right?
I got Malzahn on the mind.
What do you think about Hugh Freeze getting fired?
Oh, that's another story. We're going to talk more about that. It seems like, we said last week, don't you get tired, Ole Miss folks, of talking about everything football, talking about the allegations? Well, now you're probably not going to talk any real football conversation for a year, except for who's my next coach going to be, because it ain't going to be Matt Luke.
Right.
He's just filling in, and he probably should be looking towards another job while he's coaching this season, I would think, because they're not gonna keep him on. I wouldn't think. Now, I've seen bigger surprises before, i.e., Orgeron being hired on.
Yes.
Really, you fired Les for Orgeron?
Yeah.
So I've seen bigger surprises. So. I just don't expect Matt Luke for it to be him. Orgeron's been a head coach before, so I think that's why that happened. But I don't think he's the answer. So really, the only football talk out of Ole Miss this season is going to be who's the next head coach going to be. The only football talk with substance, I believe, because I do not think they're going to have a good season. I just don't. Not after all the turmoil.
So I just don't know. But we are about to get in with Cole Cubelic. And we cannot wait to call Cole. So are you ready to talk a little bit of Auburn football with Cole? All right, cool. Hey, Cole.
What's up, man?
How are you doing?
I'm I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. All right, Cole, so real quick, would you please tell everyone who you are and what you do, please?
My name is Cole Cubelic. I am host of the Cube Show, 6 to 10 a.m. on Ump Sports. You can go to umpsports.com. And I am a sideline analyst for college football games on the SEC Network.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Well, let me ask you about this. How surprised were you when Ole Miss and Hugh Freeze resigned last Thursday? Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. I wasn't floored. I had heard rumors of things that had potentially been going on around Auburn, Mississippi that involved Coach Freeze. But,
yes.
You know, he was the guy that I was doing Sunbelt games, and, you know, I met Hugh Freeze when he was an offensive coordinator at Arkansas State. I got to know him as the head coach at Arkansas State, covering their games for CSS, and obviously covered him at Ole Miss. And so you don't believe that somebody is that kind of a person, per se. So it surprised me from that standpoint because Hugh Freeze has always been great to me. He's always treated me with a tremendous amount of respect. So I was definitely surprised, but it's the SEC. We hear a lot of different things, and a lot of people talk about a lot of guys. So
yes.
I had heard some things, and because of that, I wasn't necessarily floored.
Well, where do you think Ole Miss goes from here now that he's gone?
It's definitely a wait-and-see approach, and I don't think Ole Miss will have any intentions of searching for, looking for, offering their head coach position to anybody else until the NCAA investigation is completed. And the severity of that, I think, will depend on what caliber coach you can really go for. And at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people, Stingray,
yes.
I hear them, and they talking about Ole Miss is going to be done for 10, 15 years. I'm just not buying that.
Right.
I think sometimes we discount the egos of these college football coaches, and they think they can come in and fix something. They think their way is going to be better, and their way is the only way to make things right.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about $4.5 million, if not more, coaching in the SEC at a school that has good tradition, great facilities, great fan support, and you're going to be going against the best of the best. So I don't think that Ole Miss is going to have to go settle for Russ Probst from Colquitt County High School in Georgia to come be their head coach. They'll get a good head coach, but just how good, I think, will be dependent on what the NCAA finally rules.
All right, and so let's move on to your alma mater, Auburn, and talk about them. How excited for you are you about the Stidham at quarterback down there?
I think he's got a chance to be fantastic. I'm not going to put him at the top of my SEC quarterback list right now because I haven't seen him play in the SEC. He's played a very limited amount of college football. So he's a great fit with Chip Lindsey and the way Chip Lindsey wants to run and manage his offense. And I've said this entire offseason that if Chip Lindsey truly is able to run his offense, call the plays, design the game plan, implement his game plan, and coach that offense in the style and the manner that he wants to, and Gus Malzahn can be sort of hands-off with that, I think Jarrett Stidham could have a big year. I mean, he's a guy that has vertical accuracy. He can push the ball down the field and be very accurate with it. That's going to stretch the safeties back and out, which obviously Auburn's going to be able to run the football, and it just opens that up even more. So they're loaded at tailback. They've got great options at the offensive line. I don't think they have the first five set just yet. Some talented receivers. I think they have a tight end in Jalen Harris that's ready to bust out this year. And Stidham is very deliberate. He's got a quick delivery. He understands. He's very presidential, I think, his demeanor. He understands when and how to get the ball out, understands where to get the football to. And from that standpoint, I think he's going to be a guy that has a really good opportunity to put up huge numbers in that Auburn offense this fall.
Well, man, that's awesome. And how do you see Auburn faring in the SEC West this year? Because they've got to replace a lot of talent on defense.
I've got Auburn finishing second in the West. I think they go into the Georgia game with an opportunity to play their way into Atlanta. I think they'll have two conference games remaining, Georgia and Alabama, and they'll have a chance to win them both and get in. Now, probably if they beat Georgia at the Iron Bowl, will probably decide who's going to go to Atlanta in the SEC championship game. But I think there's enough on defense for Kevin Steele to still have a very good unit. I think on the defensive line, Montravius Adams and Carl Lawson are not easily replaced, but there are some numbers there with Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown. I think the Auburn linebackers played great football a season ago. Deshaun Davis and Trey Williams don't get near enough credit for how good a football they played. I didn't even notice it until I went back and studied it this offseason. But those guys play great football. I think they're fine at corner. Trey Matthews, the thumper at safety, can come in and help with the run game. They'd probably like another safety or two to help with depth. But I think Kevin Steele showed last year, Stingray, that he's a guy that doesn't have to be overly complex. He can just put his guys in position to make play, sort of see ball football. Because let's be honest, if Auburn's winning football games, they're scoring points.
Yes.
It's not a team that needs to win games 10-9 or 14-7. Auburn's going to score points if they're winning football games, and that makes Kevin Steele's life a little bit easier. I think there's enough on defense for Auburn to be a formidable football team and defense this fall.
Okay.
Hi, Cole. This is Brian, Stingray's co-host. How much do you think?
Hey, Brian.
We were just talking earlier about the possibility, of Gus Malzahn's seat being a little warm, and mainly it all boils down to not beating Alabama, really, in a few years. And I don't think he's near on the hot seat that, one, Kevin Sumlin, and two, Butch Davis may be, or Butch Jones, I apologize. But what do you think it does for Auburn and Gus Malzahn if he's able to beat Clemson on the road and, take out Mississippi State and Ole Miss at home and goes into Baton Rouge undefeated? Do you think that pretty much just – is he good at that point, or is it still boil down to Georgia and Alabama, do you think?
Those are always going to be big parts of it. Those are Auburn's two biggest rivals. LSU is a rivalry game. Mississippi State's become a bit of a rivalry game. They're all important. And if you win more than you lose, that's going to help. I don't really like to play the game of Coach A, B, or C needs to win X amount of games to keep his job. If you tell me that Gus Malzahn needs to win 9 and he wins 8, the team gets hot towards the end of the season, beats Georgia and Alabama, you're going to fire that guy?
Yeah.
Georgia tried that with Mark Richt, and we don't really know how that's going to work out just yet. So, I think if the program is headed in the right direction, if the football team shows that they're improving, and things are handled the right way, there's not really a number that Malzahn has to get to. Now, beating in Georgia and Alabama are going to help. They're always going to make a big difference. That's always going to be a way for him to keep his job. And that's the ultimate goal, is to win every game, especially to go out and to beat Georgia and Alabama. I think if he wins some of those games that you talked about before, and they're competitive in the Georgia and Alabama games, things look good, that's not necessarily going to guarantee that he loses his job. But the LSU game will be huge.
Yes.
Auburn hasn't defeated LSU since I played college football. In Baton Rouge, and that was 17 years ago. So it's kind of embarrassing for me to sit back and say I was on the last Auburn football team that won in Baton Rouge. I should be able to say that. So there are other big games. It doesn't just boil down to the Alabama game or Georgia and Alabama to determine whether or not Malzahn keeps his job. And that goes for all those coaches. I think there's a much bigger perception, is a much bigger part of whether or not a coach keeps his job or loses his job than it is, did you get to X amount of number of wins? Now, with Kevin Sumlin, it's a little bit different because we have an administrator who publicly stated we want to see him get to this number of wins. Now, that's a completely different deal.
Yes.
Stingray, why do we have the phone in front of the camera? Tell me what we got going on here. What is this setup?
Because we are recording on Periscope Live right now.
I got to Snapchat this just so people can see what's going on here.
What's he seeing on his end? Nothing but the phone.
Right, and me. That's awesome. Well, how do you see the West shaping out, Cole?
I think it's going to be Alabama again.
Okay.
I think Alabama wins the West, and there are holes in this football team. You guys,
yep.
I think the people who are watching this and you yourself know I picked Mississippi State to upset Alabama this year, so I think there'll be a team that has some flaws.
Yes.
I think there'll be a team that has some more weaknesses than maybe they've had the past 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still the standard. They still have more talent than every other team in the league. They still have the best coach in the league.
Yes.
Probably the best coaching staff in the league. So from when you put all those together, it's a team that even if they do have those flaws and if they do have a few chinks in the armor, I'm confident they'll be able to figure it out. And I'm not overly confident enough in any of the teams in the East to meet Alabama on that stage in Atlanta and be able to get an SEC championship. So I think if there is another SEC champion, it probably comes out of the West. It'd be Auburn or LSU. But I don't really see a team in the East being able to knock off Alabama.
Okay, and your team in the East is going to be Georgia or Florida?
I can't pick Kentucky or South Carolina.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you can. You can pick anyone. Yeah.
Stingray's high on Kentucky.
I love it. I think Kentucky's going to be good.
I've got Kentucky finishing third in the East. I've got Florida winning the East, Georgia finishing second. Georgia has too much talent to not be a good football team.
Yeah.
And now, are they going to be a great team? I'm not really buying into that. Jacob Eason needs to prove to me that football means a lot to him and that he's a football first guy. I don't really know if that's the case right now. The running back position's obviously strong. Offensive line struggled last year. A couple good tight ends. They don't really have the perimeter weapons. Is Trent Thompson going to be back and be his normal self on defense? If so, they can be pretty formidable on that side of the ball. Bellamy and Carter, I think, are pretty good edge guys, but they don't have a lot of wow guys really on defense. Roquan Smith's a good linebacker, but just not a lot of guys that really scare you. I think that's kind of the case across the league. I mean, Trent Thompson can be one of those guys. Arden Key can be one of those guys. I think Rashawn Evans and Bama can be one of those guys. But this is not like last year where there is just defensive lineman after outside linebacker after defensive tackle that just can wreck a game plan by himself in the SEC. So I've got Florida. I think they have the most talented offensive line in the league, loaded at running back, maybe the most talented group of receivers in the league. The defensive line with Kari Clark, Taven Bryan, CeCe Jefferson, Zuniga, they're going to be fine. A lot of people, I understand they lost a lot on the front seven, but hell, almost every team lost a lot on the front seven in the SEC. So that's not going to be something that's abnormal for them to have to overcome. Talented enough on the back end. Big loss in safety this week, but I still think Jim McElwain is the second best coach in the league, at worst third best coach in the league, and Florida finds a way to get it done. But I'm high on Kentucky. I think they finished third. And I'm high on South Carolina. I think South Carolina's going to have a really good offense. They'll struggle on defense, but their schedule's just nasty. And that's one of the reasons I got Kentucky finishing ahead of Tennessee. Tennessee's schedule is just brutal.
Oh, yes.
And South Carolina's schedule is brutal. So I think sometimes we just look at who's coming back and which teams have what they've done in previous years, instead of looking at the schedule and how it plays out and using that to determine where teams are going to finish.
So essentially, if you have to put money on it, Cole, you're basically going Cavs Warriors and calling a Bama versus Florida Part 3.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, it's got to that point, especially with Alabama now. Somebody else has got to prove that they can do it. Somebody else has got to prove that they can step up and they can steal the throne from Alabama because they're the king of the hill right now, and they're on the mountain, on top of the mountain, and somebody else has got to knock them off. Yes. And we're pretty much to that point with Florida. I mean, Tennessee got Florida last year. That was the year that they should have been able to take the division. They couldn't do it. So Georgia or Tennessee or South Carolina or Kentucky, whoever it is, they're going to have to prove that they can push Jim McElwain and the Gators out of that spot.
I got you. And finally, how hot is the seat up in Knoxville for Butch Jones?
Well, Butch Jones has done some really good things. I don't think we look at where that program was when he took over.
Okay.
He's recruiting well. He's obviously been to bowl games. He's put together 9-win seasons. Now, is that to the standards that most Tennessee fans want and expect? Probably not. But I always say this, Stingray, we have to take into account this sort of Saban-Meyer effect. And everyone thinks that their program is going to be what Nick Saban and Urban Meyer have created wherever they've been. And it's just not reality.
Right.
Butch Jones deserves a chance to prove that he can continue to grow that program and have success this year. I think of all the coaches that we've mentioned, maybe opposite Kevin Sumlin, just because of what an administrator at his school said, those guys are going to have to go out and win 4 or 5 games, 3 games to lose their jobs. Because we've also seen across this country and across this conference that if you fire somebody, you better have somebody in mind.
Yes.
I ask the question all the time on my show, who are you going to go get? And I just don't know if there's a lot of top-tier, great college football coaches out there that somebody's going to go get that's automatically going to be a better option. So if Butch Jones doesn't completely fall on his face, and that program doesn't completely nosedive this fall, I don't think his job's in jeopardy because he's run his program the right way. He made staff changes this offseason. You have to give him a little. I respect a coach that's willing to make staff changes because that tells me that he's willing to do things differently to get better. Right. So I think you have to give him a little bit of time to see if he's making the correct decisions, and if so, it's not going to happen overnight.
You know, one thing that when we're talking about the SEC championship game and, you know, really, like you were saying, you think if there's another SEC champion besides Alabama, they're coming out of the West? Because it's like,
I think, I think
we
the
really,
teams that
we really don't give
have a real shot are Auburn and LSU in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, and we really don't give the East a chance anymore. And sometimes it's kind of you think, why should we? I was just sitting here while you were talking, and Florida in 2008 was the last time that a team from the East has won the SEC championship. And an even more striking statistic is since 2008, the state of Alabama accounts for 7 of 8 SEC titles, with LSU and 11 being the only other team to win outside of the state of Alabama. That's impressive because Auburn's won 2 in that span as well.
Yeah, and that LSU team actually lost to a team from Alabama in the national championship.
Yeah, they did.
So it's kind of crazy how that played out.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, that's obviously skewed heavily towards Alabama. So, I mean, as an Auburn alum, it's not like I can take a lot of credit for that. But it's nice to at least have Auburn mentioned there and be a team that has competed and has played in and won an SEC championship and a national championship recently. It's not only that, but, I mean, the scores of the games. I mean, you think about what Alabama's done the last 2 years, what Alabama did to Missouri, what Auburn did to Missouri. I mean, they've been blowouts. They've even been competitive football games for a while in the title game. There were some great SEC championship games early on, some very competitive, highly competitive SEC title games, and that's one of the reasons that game propelled to the stage that it was on. I mean, think about that Alabama-Georgia game. Yeah. You think about Alabama-Florida at Legion Field in '92. We've had some great SEC championship games. So that's the reason that game is considered to be a play-in game to the college football championship, is it's usually 2 of the best teams in the country, and it's usually a great football game. But that has obviously changed here in the recent years.
Yeah, Alabama and Georgia is the last good SEC title game I can even remember, and that's been about 5 years ago.
Well, yeah, I don't think there hasn't been one since then, for sure.
And Cole, finally, if you had to put a number on it, what is the final record for Auburn this season?
I'll play it safe and say 9-3.
Okay.
I think there's a good chance that they get to 10-2. I think when you have a new quarterback, you have a new offensive coordinator, and you lose a couple guys on defense, there's going to be a couple chances for a slip up there. You're playing the 2 teams that played for the national championship game a season ago. So the non-conference schedule is tough. You open up with a team that's running the triple option. That's physically going to take a bit of a toll on you early on. So even though I do think that there's a good chance that Auburn could get to 10, I'll go play it safe right now and say 9-3.
Okay, awesome. Well, man, thank you for your time. And is there anything else that you would like to plug, like how we can listen to your show and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's easy. Umpsports.com. You can also download the app, search WUMP in your app store. We're on 6 to 10 a.m. weekday mornings on the Ump, and myself and Archie Shea do my radio show, and then you can follow me on Twitter at Cole Cubelic, Cubelic.
Well, man, I look forward to seeing you on the sidelines at Mississippi State some this year. That should be awesome.
Look forward to it.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for your time, and good luck this season, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Look forward to it, man. Thanks, Stingray.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
See ya. Thank you.
Well, man, I thought that was pretty awesome. Did you?
I did. Enjoyed talking a little bit of Auburn football. I think all of he made, very unbiased opinions there. I could see the same thing. I can see Auburn going 9-3, 10-2. As a Bama alumnus myself, it always gets you nervous when you have a streak against someone.
Yeah.
Bama's got 3 straight against Auburn. So what happens? I mean, eventually they're going to win again.
Yeah.
Could be this year. So that's a good thing that Auburn has going for them. Right now, the teams that play against Alabama, if you're not Tennessee or Arkansas, who have now lost 10 straight.
Right. Or Mississippi State, 9.
Or State's got 9. You kind of think, well, we're on the wrong end of the street. LSU's lost 6 in a row to Bama.
Yeah.
And, you know, Auburn's one of those teams where they could come up and they could bite Alabama in the rear.
And look, let's go on ahead and go a little bit further, man. Florida, 2008 was the last time, I think, when they beat Bama.
Yeah, but they don't really play regularly. So,
I know,
but Bama's gotten them. That's starting to be a pretty large streak. And it's mainly because they played so much in the SEC title game.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So, well, you want to switch gears and talk a little Tennessee?
Yeah, let's do it.
And we have 2 guests coming on for Tennessee.
Yeah, it's an extra one.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
We didn't know if Dr. Sparks was going to be able to get on today.
Oh, he's a doctor now?
He's been a doctor.
I thought it was... wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we've got Chris Yao coming on next. And then we'll have Johnny Sparks come in to talk a little bit of Tennessee football. So what did you think about his analysis of the Tigers?
I agree. I still think there, though, the question mark is going to be at quarterback, though, and defense, like he said.
All right. Well, what time do we have Chris coming on?
3. So we better call him now.
4 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, we've went over our personal analysis of the 2 teams that we're covering today, so we'll go ahead and answer some questions with Chris Yao.
Well, actually, let's go ahead and turn over the questions to the fans real quick. What do you guys have? What questions do you guys have pertaining to Auburn or Tennessee? And nobody's paying attention. Don't you just love that, man?
I do.
Give us just 1 second here, and we will... So, Brian, overall, who do you think is going to win the East and the West?
I think I'm going with what a lot of people have said. I'm going Bama and Georgia.
You're going Georgia over Florida?
The defense is going to be very good, and I like Jacob Eason. I've liked him since I saw him play last year. Florida, if they get there, they're going to get smushed again. I don't think that Florida is just – they don't have the quarterback yet. They've got one that's enrolled now, though. But I don't think they've got the guy that they need under center yet to I don't think it's going to be Zaire. Mm-hmm. I think he'll have about the season that the other Notre Dame quarterback had, Golson, that transferred to Florida State, which means they're going to win a good bit of games, but they're not going to win the big ones. They're not going to they're not going to win the East. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think that he's all everyone's built him up to be. So I'm going Georgia. Yeah.
Yes.
And those are, ironically, the last 2 teams that we cover.
Mm-hmm. So that should be really awesome, dude. All right, so let's go ahead and call Chris, and apparently he is offline right now. You've got his number, though, right? So, once again, while we were trying to get Chris Yao on the thing, we would love to answer some of your questions about Tennessee and or Auburn. And so, we really would like to, get your take on it. And I saw earlier somebody said the East was going to be won by Missouri. Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
A lot of publications have them finishing last.
Yes.
So from last to first.
So I don't know about that, but anybody have any questions for us regarding Auburn or Tennessee? Feel free to comment those down in the bottom, and we will answer those while we were trying to get Chris Yao on the phone. No, there are no ladies in my life right now because I'm too busy being Stingray. So there's that, right? So you can't juggle that. Would Dan Mullen leave state for Tennessee? I don't know. What do you think, man? I mean, is Tennessee a better job though than Mississippi State?
Oh yes, it's a better job, but I think you think he'd get tired of losing to Alabama.
Yeah, because he hadn't really beaten Alabama.
Well, I think, man, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, we had somebody on who said, T.J. Moe last week, Bama and Tennessee are the two best jobs in the SEC. They've got the most tradition. Now, Tennessee might not be the best job right now.
Well, LSU could be. Throw them in there.
LSU, they could be Florida. Those are two jobs that have been on the up and up. Georgia's a very good job as well. But no, I couldn't see that really happening. I think if Dan leaves Mississippi State, he's going to leave the SEC.
Yeah, I think so.
Because the SEC is so tough to win.
But I'm going to tell you this, though, Brian. Dan Mullen has really got to surprise a lot of people this year and really get the hype back around him because... Well, he's got to get the hype back around him because he had an opportunity to win and leave after the 14 season, and he did not do it.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk Tennessee real quick. And, Chris, how are things going with you, buddy?
Looks like things are going great now, finally.
Absolutely,
hey, Chris,
man.
How are you?
Doing great. And so, Chris, real quick, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, I am the editor of the Advertiser News of Spring Hill and Thompson Station here in Middle Tennessee. Was most recently at the Trustful Tribune outside of Birmingham, so a lot of SEC country.
Awesome, man. And so I've got to ask you, are you a Tennessee fan or Alabama?
I'm actually a Tennessee fan, although you'll see Bear Bryant over my right shoulder.
Well, man, that's awesome. All right,
will you get a lot? Will you get a lot of catch a lot of hell about that from UT friends that come into your office?
Not yet, but it's going to be pretty interesting because once people start seeing it. Although I do also have an autographed jersey of Peyton Manning, so that usually takes care of that.
Okay.
Well, let me go ahead and start out by asking you, how hot is the seat right now for Butch Jones, in your opinion, heading into the 2017 season?
I'll be honest with you, the seat is not as hot as it should be.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say a 6.
Okay.
And if it were me, I'd put him in an 8, but it's been no secret that I'm not a fan of Butch Jones, so there's that.
Yes.
Personal opinion.
I got you. Well, how do you see this season shaping out, and especially at the quarterback position without Josh Dobbs now?
Well, as a Tennessee fan, you have to be worried because nothing more than just the unknown factor. Quentin Dormady has played well at times last year.
Yes.
Jared Garantano is probably going to be the guy, but it's still a battle right now. Nobody really knows who the starting quarterback is going to be, and you'd much rather have Josh Dobbs than either of those two guys. But hey,
yeah,
it's college. That's what happens. So it's going to be a lot of interesting things here because, to be honest with you, I really feel like Tennessee is going to be better at the offensive line, which is going to make their quarterback situation better. Josh Dobbs had such a difficult time last year because of the offensive line. Now that is the strength of this team.
Yeah, you're good.
I do apologize about that. I do apologize about that.
Somebody else is trying to Skype in.
Skype in right now. Give us just a
second. Our
next
guest is a little bit early.
I got you. Listen, so continue what you were saying about Josh Dobbs because we got cut off.
Essentially what I'm saying is that it's going to be interesting to see what the difference is because of the offensive line situation. Dobbs such a difficult time because of the offensive line being an issue that, we'll see what happens.
I got you. Well, all right, so let's go ahead and break down the schedule here. They play Georgia Tech first off.
That's going to be a tough one.
How do you see them faring first game against Tennessee?
On Memorial Day, or on Labor Day.
Georgia Tech.
Labor Day game.
Well, here's what's interesting, and I know this is going to be weird, but guys, remember that Brady Hoke is now the defensive line coach at Tennessee. So, watching the defensive line, which, by the way, it lost 3 starters, we'll have to face a guy, we'll have to face some folks like, you'll see if Jonathan Convo can come in and be the kind of player that he's supposed to be, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested to see what happens with Brady Hoke versus the triple option. It's just, to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen because the defensive line is so inexperienced.
Right. I got you. Well, talk to us about the defense, because the run defense for Tennessee absolutely got shredded last year. Do you think that they make a bigger improvement this year?
Well, now remember, guys, at one time, Tennessee was down 8 defensive starters.
Yes.
And that was such an overlooked factor of last year. The fact that Jones was able to win 8 games with guys who were, really shouldn't have been playing yet, that's pretty impressive. So those guys have experience now. You've got guys like Convo, Darrell Taylor, Kyle Phillips.
Yes.
That's the defensive line. It's really going to be, the fact is that they're going to have to find a way to shore up the middle linebacker position and those Sam linebackers, because that's where that's where the Volunteers had an issue last year.
Yes.
What Chris, we talked about the hot seat earlier. What do you think that fans and Tennessee supporters' reaction would be if the Vols didn't beat Florida last year? Did that carry a lot of weight into how hot the seat is?
I think it did. Tennessee fans have been long waiting to get that elusive win over Florida, and it was very interesting because, for the Will Muschamp era at Florida, Tennessee should have won every one of those games.
Yes.
They were in the lead for most of those games. So, it was a big monkey off of their back, and of course beating Georgia again was huge. The reason that Jones' seat is really this hot is you can't lose to Vanderbilt.
Yes.
You can't, you've got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, the Kentuckys, the Vanderbilts. You have to beat those teams. And if he does that last year, you're looking at a 10-win season.
Yep. I got you. Well, finally, how do you see Tennessee panning out? What do you think their final record will be overall when we enter December?
When we enter December, if the record is 8-3, I will be, as a fan, happy. As an analyst, a little surprised.
Right.
I think 7 wins is the maximum for this team.
Okay.
Just because you have to play Alabama, you have to play Georgia, who's going to be very good this year. The Florida game is going to be really difficult. It's, and let's be honest, Vanderbilt poses a pretty big threat. So we'll see. But 7-4, 8-3 is probably close to where you're going to see the Volunteers end up by the end of the year.
Okay. And who do you have coming out of the West, and who do you have coming out of the East meeting up in Atlanta?
If I had to pick today in Atlanta, you can't pick against Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. In the preseason, it's just that you can't pick against Alabama because
right.
There's no reason not to. We're returning Offensive Player of the Year, etc. out of the East, it's still a toss-up between Florida and Georgia for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Georgia's probably got the edge in that regard. So I would have to say Alabama and Georgia.
Okay.
Which
that's who I've got.
Is really fun.
Yes. I got you. All right, buddy. Well, thank you for your time. And before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to plug or preview, like how we can find you and that kind of stuff?
Well, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can. It's at Chris Yao, A-N, or Advertiser News, or at Chris Yao 14, which is a little more active in the college football world. So at Chris Yao, Y-O-W 14.
Okay.
Feel free to contact me there.
Okay, wonderful. All right, buddy. Well, thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you on later this year.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Bye-bye.
No problem.
All right. Well,
so there's that with one guest from Tennessee, and that was exciting.
Another surprise guest.
Yes.
So
our former teacher, as a matter of fact.
Yep, we both had this next guest. We'll spend a minute talking about him. I guess I know him well enough that I can kind of. I'll let him do some of this.
Right.
He graduated from the University of Indiana with his PhD in 2006.
Yes.
Dr. Johnny Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
Stingray and I had him for.
At UA.
Did you take him for a sports media class?
College football in the media.
He's taught college football in the media. Awesome class. He's taught advertising classes. I had him for a couple other media management classes, things like that.
And he taught at Texas Tech.
He taught me. I studied under him during my master's program at Texas Tech.
And then he came to Alabama.
He was at Texas Tech after Alabama.
Okay.
He was at Alabama. I had him as a professor in undergrad and then in grad school at Texas Tech. And then he taught for a few years, helped get the department started at Central Michigan University,
yes.
And now he's advertising department chair at Ball State in Muncie, Indiana.
Wow, that's awesome, dude.
Yes, so should we call Johnny on now and continue
Tennessee
talk?
Sure, absolutely. Let's do it. Johnny's so awesome.
Well, this is going to be a fun interview. Hey!
Johnny, what's up, man?
Whoa, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Doing well. Are we on the air?
We
Yes.
are. We're live. Yes,
We
sir.
got 80 people watching you.
All right.
And
Welcome to the home office in Muncie, Indiana.
Awesome, dude.
How's the weather up there?
It's hot today, sunny, but I've got my son Eli here with me, so it's really nice weather for summertime.
Yes.
How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
We're trying to, as you know about, we're trying to bear this July Alabama heat.
Gotcha.
It was like 107 the other day with the heat index.
That means it's getting close to football weather, right?
It sure does. That's why we're here to talk football today. So, what the first thing I want to ask you about is everything starts at the quarterback position. You had Josh Dobbs for 4 years, and now you are either going to have Dormady or Guantanamo. No, I know it's not Guantanamo. I can't pronounce the guy's name. The freshman. So what do you think about the quarterback position?
Well, I think that Quentin Dormady, as I understand, is throwing mostly near-perfect passes right now and in the spring. So I believe that that's the way that we'll see the position go this year. Josh Dobbs was well-equipped to run Tennessee out of a lot of trouble because of his great speed and athleticism. Mm-hmm. However, Dormady
I think we'll be able to throw Tennessee out of some trouble in a similar vein.
I got you. Well, if you would, Dr. Sparks, please tell us who you are and what you do, please. Just kind of introduce yourself.
Okay. All right, Steve. I am the department chair in the Department of Journalism at Ball State University.
Okay.
I'm originally from Tennessee, born and raised in Tennessee, and I met both of you fine fellows while I was a professor at the University of Alabama.
Yeah.
Always been a big Tennessee fan, and also I like Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
After spending some years there, it's sacrilegious, but so we've been around the SEC and the Big Ten. My doctorate degree is from Indiana University, so but we're just really passionate fans of Tennessee Volunteers football.
Well, man, that's awesome. And how do you see Tennessee faring this year? I mean, obviously, like you were talking about, you lost Dobbs. How do you feel the hot seat is on for Butch Jones?
Well, up until a few weeks ago, I had some pretty serious concerns about the direction of Tennessee football because most of the people that I know that are closest to the program seem very pessimistic, I guess.
Yes.
And there didn't seem to be strong signs of hope out of Knoxville. But there were some key off-season coaching changes made. One notable one, the addition of Brady Hoke with the head coaching experience that he brought at Michigan. This is the guy who could really recruit at Michigan. He was stacked up against some pretty heavy competition with Urban Meyer coming into the league and trying to rebuild at Michigan like we've had at Tennessee with Butch Jones. So I think that was a good addition to the Tennessee staff. Some of those additions to the Tennessee staff, along with some of the guys that they have coming in and some guys coming of age, like we mentioned, Quentin Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with those changes and some of those guys coming of age, I've noticed that the tone coming out of Knoxville in the past few weeks has been much more positive. And so I'm looking forward to another SEC East run this year. I believe Tennessee has the coaching and the horses to make a run in the East. Last year, Florida, maybe overachieved a bit, and Tennessee underachieved a bit. Maybe this is the year that we see Tennessee overachieve a bit, and maybe always underachieving Georgia living up to its over-recruiting, underachieving status, and maybe get a win down in the swamp for the first time in about 15 years.
Hey, I've got Georgia winning the East, but that can change. It always can change.
Everyone Georgia winning the East every year, and it seldom happens.
I mean, they have 11 guys coming back on defense. I don't think they lost anybody, so that's the main factor. But I think it's really for Georgia, it's going to come down to how Eason plays. He was erratic, he looked like Dan Marino at times last year, and then sometimes he looked bad.
He's a great quarterback. He's got the potential to be one of the greatest ever in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. Especially you saw it, and I know you thought it was the pass that beat you in the Tennessee game. Man, he put that thing on a rope. I thought the ball was going to unravel.
You couldn't throw a better pass, and it took back to the days. Georgia had another great quarterback. I'm sorry, his name's slipping my mind, but boy, maybe you fellas could help me back in the early 2000s.
Matt Stafford?
Stafford. And,
yeah.
But, during a streak that Georgia was able to run together against Tennessee, it seemed like when they needed to pass, the guy would make a pass. And so I thought maybe that's what we were heading back into again. But luck turned to the Volunteers that day, and thankfully.
Yeah, I would have loved to see your reaction, you and Eli, when you probably went from being at the lowest point. Well, you probably went from being at the highest point you could be at, almost a sure win, and then almost definite defeat, to being back up on top of the world. I mean, it was really an emotional roller coaster, right?
Yeah. I'll let Eli.
Okay, you can take that one, Eli.
That was pretty crazy. I remember they made that pass, and Dad's just walking back. Oh, it's over. So I'm trying to stay positive. I said, hey, it's not over yet. We still got a chance. Now, I don't know if I believe that, but we got the ball. Dobbs throws it into the end zone, touchdown. I just go into the kitchen and poured a glass of bleach. Yeah. And I was prepared for the worst. I was ready to just drink the bleach. And I thought he was foolish for being hopeful. I was like, kid, you don't know anything. This is over. We're done. But then when the pass, landed in Jennings' hands and they fell in the end zone, I couldn't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
For that Tennessee team, you came to expect the unexpected, and for better and worse. Early in the season, seemed like some games were out of reach, and they were able to pull it out of their hat. And at Texas A&M, they fought back and got that game in overtime, and we thought for sure, that we were going to do it again. But we came up short that day, and then unexpectedly lost to South Carolina and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I never expected those two, but that happens.
Well, that's what he can't afford this year. He can afford to lose to the Floridas, the Georgias, the Alabama, LSUs of the world, but he absolutely cannot afford to lose to the South Carolinas and the Vanderbilts. The patient for Tennessee's faithful, we expect to win those games.
It would sure go a long way with Butch if he could beat Alabama, though. Nobody's beaten Bama since Fulmer, which you've only had 2 coaches since then, but that's a game. I just don't know what year. Arkansas's coming, LSU's coming again, and so Mississippi State's never coming. I'm just kidding. Well, you get these large streaks against somebody, and you saw what happened to us against Ole Miss a few years ago. All streaks do come to an end, and so it would do wonders if Butch Jones.
Yes.
I've called him Butch Davis twice today. Butch Jones, if he could be the one to beat Bama for the first time since 2006.
Well, Eli and I traveled down to Tuscaloosa a year before last in that 1913 Alabama win.
Mm-hmm.
And that was as close as Tennessee's come since Mount Cody got his gut in the way of our dreams.
2015 was a little scary, too, for me.
Yeah, so that game in 2015, Eli and I were there for that. Eli, tell them about the young woman after the game, what she asked you.
Oh, she asked me for a light.
She had a cigar.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's awful.
You tell her you aren't old enough to smoke.
Well, last year we went to Knoxville for the game. We tried to make an annual trip, and we thought we had a pretty good chance in Knoxville for about the first 2.5 minutes, and then after that it was all downhill. But we had some of the best seats in the house to watch Alabama thrash Tennessee.
Yeah.
We had our cigars. We were ready to go, but they'll be stale by the time Tennessee has a chance, I guess. The smoke goes.
No.
Well, let me ask you this. Are y'all going down to Atlanta for the Georgia Tech game this year? That's the first game.
He would love to do that. My work schedule, that's the beginning of the semester, so that makes it really tough for me to get away and go down there. But that'd be a great opportunity. As I understand, it won't be in the Georgia Dome, right? It's in the new stadium.
Yes.
Yeah, the Georgia Domes. Did they tear it down yet?
Yeah, they tore it down. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm glad they did that because we haven't had a very good run in the Georgia Dome lately.
Yes.
Y'all ain't been there in a while.
Whenever we we were. It didn't end well. But I think we finally broke a streak under Jones. We finally got through there, won a game. But so Georgia Tech, that's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll get to see how Tennessee compares, with the middle to bottom half of the ACC.
Right. Well, what do you think about the Hugh Freeze issue with Ole Miss? I mean, that is a really developing story there.
Well, as a Tennessee fan, a lot of Tennessee people talk about, man, how do you compete with Alabama with Nick Saban recruiting year in and year out, recruiting those top classes year after year. But in my mind, the real competition for Tennessee football, most notably, is the Clemson Tigers just down the road in Death Valley. Tennessee owned Georgia and South Carolina for many years. Now Clemson is a real player in the recruiting. And in recent years, Hugh Freeze has really upped the game at Ole Miss, claiming a lot of the talent that Tennessee might have vied for in the past. So I think this is a huge, huge deal for Tennessee and other teams that are looking to emerge in the SEC, because there's going to be a rebuilding period at Ole Miss, and obviously some of the activities that have gone on down there, they haven't done it the right way. They didn't do it the clean way. So programs that maybe are trying to do things the right way, hopefully Butch Jones, Tennessee will see a benefit from that. And that should certainly impact
Mississippi State. Yes.
Yes. There should be some celebrations going on.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So one thing I wanted to get both you and Stingray's perspective on was really the last time, or I guess you could call it one of the most meaningful Tennessee-Mississippi State games in history, because this is the only time that y'all have gone on the, against one another with a lot on the line. In 1998, in the Georgia Dome, you actually came out on the better end of this one. Tennessee finishes 13-0, wins the SEC championship, wins the national title. Mississippi State with who's Cheryl?
Wayne Madkin.
Cheryl, the coach.
Yes.
Yeah, Jackie Sherrill, Wayne Madkin. Had a lot of good players on Mississippi State. I think they came over at 8-3. I wanted to get both of you guys' reactions about that game, even though it has been, nearly 20 years ago.
You want to go first, Stingray?
You can go first. The winning team can go first.
Well, quite frankly, going into that game, Jackie Sherrill, Mississippi State, always known for having really stout defenses. And at that time, Mississippi State was one of the only teams who could shut down the fun and gun. So heading into that game, I was cautiously optimistic about Tennessee's chances. We felt like we were a team of destiny.
Right.
And I think that maybe Tennessee looked past Mississippi State coming into the game, but they were quickly shown that if they slept on that night in Atlanta, that the team of destiny and the dream season would end. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you guys got down a little bit early in that game, didn't you, and had some trouble with them. I remember it being a close game till almost to the fourth, I believe.
Well, and ultimately, as I recall, as you say, it's been 20 years since then, but what I can remember is Peerless Price making a phenomenal catch late in that game in the end zone. And Peerless Price was really a guy that Tennessee fans took for granted. There were so many talented players on that 1998 team and the teams in the years prior to 1998. But Peerless Price was making big catches of mediocre balls thrown by Team night in, night out. And that night was no different. And, at that moment, after clinching the second straight SEC title, it felt like the good times would never end. And now it's like they'll never come back.
Right.
Man, did anybody expect Did anybody expect y'all to win the title after the year after Peyton left, though?
I can tell you this guy didn't. But I can tell you when we knew that we had won the title. And I don't know how many other Tennessee fans would agree with this from that era, but we had a lot of 10, 11 win seasons back in that time. Perennial top 5 finishes, but we just couldn't beat Steve Spurrier and the Gators.
Yeah.
So on that night at Neyland Stadium in 1998, when the Florida kick sailed outside the rights in Tennessee and won in overtime 20-17. Both goalposts fell. That was the last time that happened at Neyland Stadium. The only time in my memory that it happened. That night I felt like we were a team of destiny, and we finally gotten over the Florida hump. And back then, it felt like if we could just beat Florida, we could beat anybody. And we proved it that year.
Yes. Well, Mississippi State's perspective, we can at least say over Ole Miss that we've at least been to Atlanta and competed in the SEC championship game. So there's that. But, yeah, that was a great opportunity for us, and we let it slip up a little bit. But I got to ask you, did you attend that Tennessee-Mississippi State game?
I was not at that game.
Okay.
Unfortunately. I wish I could have been.
That was probably back in your Austin P days.
Yeah, that was the Austin P days. Now, my son here, Eli, he's a little fella. He's lived through some miserable years.
Right.
But in 2007, 10 years ago this year, last time that Tennessee played in the SEC championship game against LSU, we did attend that game.
Right.
And it was a good game until the fourth quarter.
Yep. Yeah. Well, when does Mississippi State play Tennessee again? I have not looked at the future schedule, but we have not played each other in quite a while.
It seems like my stomach tells me that we're just about due for a trip to Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
A trip to Starkville.
Okay.
Forgive me for being sacrilegious.
That's all right. So
I'd rather go to Tuscaloosa than Starkville.
Well, it's not that far away. Unless it's an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 15 minutes, but it's a whole world away.
Yeah.
It is.
Did you say have you ever been to Starkville?
Absolutely.
And did you like it or not?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I went as a professor at the University of Alabama with Nick Saban's first team over to Starkville.
Oh, no.
And that was...
that was my first trip as well.
That was a hard day for Alabama.
Yes.
And I felt like I was sitting inside a hornet's nest.
Really?
The bell.
Those bells commenced to ring.
So, yeah.
In the hornet's nest, man. And it was something else. People treated us really well, though, up until the game was over. And
right.
Miss State had won, and this old fella said, "Go back to Alabama."
Oh, no. That's funny. Well,
you could tell there was a lot of jubilation. I understand how Mississippi State fans feel when they beat Alabama. It's how we feel when we beat Florida.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of the schools that you have taught at. How do you see those teams faring this year?
Oh, okay. Well, the University of Alabama, I'll start right there at the top. Until Nick Saban shows me otherwise, I expect them to be in the discussion right up until the end. Probably another trip back to the college football playoff. It's hard to pick against Alabama.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. So I would expect Alabama to be back there again, contending for a national championship. You just have to wonder how much longer Nick Saban will continue to coach.
Yes.
I think he can coach as long as he wants to. It's a matter of whether he wants to do some other things in his life.
Yes.
So but they're going to be right there. And then Texas Tech. Honestly, I don't know a whole lot about. They had a new coach a couple of years ago. There was a lot of excitement because I understand he was a good-looking fellow. Is he still there, Brian?
Yeah, Kingsbury, and he was actually Leach's first quarterback, but not doing too great. It seems like every other year they have a losing season. I think one game they allowed 68 points. They scored 68 points last year and still lost. So the defense is as good as it was when you and I were there, and yeah, they've really not. He's not doing that well, but he gets the benefit of a doubt because he's a homeboy, you know.
And he's pretty. So every time I talk to any of my friends back at Texas Tech, they just love the guy because he's one of them, and he's got the look and he walks the walk. I don't know how long they'll be able to tolerate the fact that he can't win a football game scoring 68 points.
Yeah.
Right. And what about Indiana?
Indiana, well, there's a coaching change in Indiana. Kevin Wilson, who was this past several years, was dismissed after some allegations about player treatments. And I thought he was a good football coach, and I believe he's going on to a Big Ten school, maybe Ohio State, be their offensive coordinator. They're fortunate to have him. I'm not sure what to really expect under new leadership in Indiana. It seemed like everything was on the right path. The product on the field was better than it had been. They beat Michigan State last year. They took Michigan to the wire in recent years. So you just never know with Indiana. But based on history, I'd have to say that they're a 5 or 6 win team.
Okay. And finally, I want both of y'all's prediction. How is Tennessee gonna fare this year, wins and loss wise, when we enter December?
Entering December. Okay. I'm gonna cheat and look at the schedule.
Okay, that's fine. Yes.
So we're gonna. Most years I would have it memorized, but I'm still trying to recover from that Vanderbilt loss.
Yes.
So Georgia Tech out the gate, I think that's a win for Tennessee. So Tennessee's 1-0 coming out of the Georgia Dome.
Okay.
That would be a big win too to start the season.
And then Indiana State, I think that's a win.
Okay.
So Tennessee's looking at 2-0 going into the Swamp. The Gators. I think that Tennessee, that's the first time we really see the test of Tennessee. Just like every other year, that's Tennessee's first test. But I think that riding the momentum from believing that they can beat Florida, they should have beaten Florida probably 3 or 4 of the last 5 years.
Right.
So I think getting the monkey off their back, they go down, they win in the Swamp. 3-0. UMass and Knoxville 4-0. The Georgia Bulldogs, again, that's going to be a big test, but they're in Knoxville. So, again, I give Tennessee the nod. I say that they'll get it done there. So, look, we're already up at, 5-0 now.
Well, fixing to go to the playoff.
Yeah, and then South Carolina. The Bulls get South Carolina, and if they've won all those other games, they're going to go 6-0, and then they go to Tuscaloosa and they lose to Alabama. Then Kentucky. It's going to be interesting to see what Kentucky brings this year. So 6-7-2. Southern Miss. I like the balls there. Missouri. Who the heck knows?
Right.
How's Missouri looking this year?
Pretty bad.
Yeah, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna be horribly improved. I called 6-6, and that was about all I'd give them. So I think I could see you winning there.
So it's really optimistic, but I say LSU. I think Tennessee wins that.
Wow.
And Vanderbilt. I believe that they're a 2 or 3 loss team. It's just hard for me to say where those 2 or 3 are coming, except Alabama.
Well,
count 3 solid losses.
If you get the right losses, I think that'll do enough to send you to Atlanta, though. You know, Alabama's a loss that don't hurt you as much because it's not in the division. You obviously probably got to beat Florida and probably got to beat Georgia to get the head-to-heads, because I think if that's the scenario, y'all are a 2 or 3 loss team, then you're probably tied with Florida or Georgia somewhere. So you got to get those tiebreakers. So, yeah, I could see that. I could see that happening. Then you guys going to Atlanta.
I see a lot hinging on that game at Gainesville. If Tennessee comes out of that game with a loss, then I could see them losing to Georgia. You know, the difference between a 2 or 3 loss season and a 3 to 7 loss season is sometimes one game. And for Tennessee, throughout the years, I've seen that it's hard to get past the loss to the Gators. And if you got a coach like Bush Jones who is on the hot seat, a loss to the Gators could turn that noise up. A loss to Georgia following that could bring it to full throttle.
I think if the only 2 losses you had on the season were, well, granted, it don't matter if you lose Georgia Tech or not because that's outside of the league, but I mean, it matters. But as far as going to Atlanta, if Alabama and LSU are the only 2 SEC losses you have, I think you're going to Atlanta, because I don't think Florida or Georgia is good enough to only have 1 loss. So if you've got that tiebreaker, I think you'll be good. Beat Florida and Georgia, and you should be good. And don't lose to Vandy.
You know, when I grew up, we never lost to Vandy.
I know.
Ever.
That's all awesome. Well, man, thank you for your time, obviously. And real quick, Brian has one more question.
Do y'all want to sing us a little Rocky Top before we go?
Go ahead, Eli. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Wish that I was on old Rocky Top down in the Tennessee hills. Ain't no Smarty smoke on Rocky Top, ain't no telephone bill. Rocky Top.
You gotta sing it with him, Johnny.
Always be home, sweet home to me. Good old Rocky Top, woo! Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
As they say back home, it's almost football time
Yes.
in Tennessee.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys. Y'all are awesome.
Appreciate it.
Do you?
All right.
Have a good
You
one.
too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
You got us a little live music today.
Man, that was so awesome,
great.
dude.
I didn't think he would do it.
What now?
I didn't think he would do it, but that's awesome.
So, man,
Little Rocky Top acapella.
yeah, that was cool. All right, man. So, you ready to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, this has been a good show, but that's about all the excitement I can handle for today.
Yes, that's right. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for staying with us throughout this whole thing. And I noticed that we have a lot more viewership today.
Yeah.
So, thank you, guys.
Especially during the interview, so we enjoy it. We love getting on and talking to these people, but it's for your viewing too. We know that you like hearing. You don't want to just sit here and listen to us two oafs. Talk about football. You want to hear some expert opinion, and that's what we try to give you, and we love you guys tuning in.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, guys, before we let you go, remember, of course, you can keep up with us on the Stingray website, msustingray.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at The Stingray Show. And we're going to start really updating that as we get closer to college football. And Brian, you got anything else you want to add, bud?
No. Thank you guys for listening.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it.
Watching.
And that's going to do it for the Auburn and Tennessee preview. Next week is going to be to other teams in the SEC. So we'll be excited. You'll announce
that later in the week?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to announce that later on in the week. So, guys, we are going to leave you now with this as we head out.